What's poppin', y'all? It's your boy Frankie. This message is for the senior class of 2019. As you prepare to take the next steps in your life, the sole purpose of this message is to impart some wisdom that I wish I had had as I prepare to walk the stage and venture out into an independence that I so much desire. This year, as my high school alma mater, Robstown High School, Go Big Red, began making preparations for their commencement exercises, I am told that I was nominated to be the keynote speaker. I was pretty stoked about such good news. Going back to speak at the school I graduated from 16 years ago made me hopeful that perhaps I could deliver a word or two that would help you in your day of need. Alas, the invitation to speak never arrived. I had to make one of three choices. One, I could choose to remain silent and I could keep my thoughts and ideas to myself. Two, I could be bitter about not getting an invitation. I could choose to be resentful towards the decision makers. Or three, I could choose to remember that not getting the main stage does not always translate to not having a stage at all. We live in an age where we all have a stage. We all have the opportunity to get our message out globally in a matter of minutes. That knowledge made me question what I use my platform for. Do I use it to glorify myself? Are my social media platforms dedicated to paint for the world a picture of me that is not entirely honest? Are my social media platforms used to spread negativity? Do I take the stage that I have been given to be vile and spread poison? Or do I help people to see a positive light daily? Now, I'm a man who has made many mistakes. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I haven't met a single alcoholic that has arrived at this realization that he or she is an alcoholic without first making a mess out of his or her life. None of us arrive here on a winning streak. Most of us arrive here as a last-ditch effort to save our lives. In my case, on November 8th, 2017, I would have taken my own life had my guardian angel not been working overtime that night. To me, there were no solutions except death to the problems I had created in my own life. As I spent the following weeks and months recovering hope and a willingness to live, life also began to teach me that this is it. This is it. This moment. This is it. There is no buzzer that lets us know that life has started. There is no referee that lets us know that we're in a timeout. There is only now. And right now, this moment counts the most. Life will test you. That's life. My wish for you is that you wake up each morning and that you pray for the courage to change. Every day, that you recommit yourself and to your life, whatever life looks like that day. I wish that every morning you wake up and take a breath and decide to live that day, to not wander through it, obedient to the limitations you set for yourself or that society has set for you. As you enter in what is often referred to as the real world, that real world will be very eager to hand you a checklist of things that need to be completed for you to be able to say that you are successful. In my case, I blindly and without questioning accepted that checklist. In order to be successful, I had to become a medical doctor, a renowned lawyer, and just so that my intelligence would not be in question, I also had to be a college professor. The real world had set a very high bar for me, and I was determined to reach it. Off I went. I took classes in law while pursuing a degree in psychology. After finishing my degree in psychology, I enrolled in nursing school. I did a year of that, hoping to apply to medical school without being in utter ignorance about the human body. After a year, I applied for a master's in a constitutional law studies program. I completed most of the coursework for that program. Now, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and my parents almost immediately after moving out said, if you decide to move out, you're going to have to be able to support yourself. So I worked my way through college. I went to school at night and worked all day. School was incredibly hard. I found it dull and unexciting. The topics did not interest me, but having the MD, JD, and PhD at the end of my names were of great importance to me. I'm a Christian man, and Isaiah wrote, so also will my word be, which will go forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but it will prosper in the task for which I have sent it. At the end of my freshman year in college, I was given an opportunity to work with a startup company dedicated to serving people diagnosed with intellectual and developmental disabilities and related conditions such as Down syndrome and autism. Not only was the work humbling because I had to work with people who were truly marginalized, but it was rewarding, and I never felt like I was working. I've had to take the call about a woman whose caregiver had raped her. The person she trusted the most for her health and safety had betrayed her in the worst way possible. I've also had to take the call from an exploited woman whose caretaker stole over $10,000 from her account. Once again, a total betrayal of trust. I've also taken the call from a victim who has manhandled so aggressively by her caretakers that she was completely covered in bruises all over her arm, not to mention a dislocated shoulder. By the time these injuries were discovered, the arm had mostly healed. I cannot imagine the pain and agony this woman felt and the frustration about not being able to communicate that to anybody. The world had told me that in order to consider myself successful, I needed to get stacked with degrees. However, life was placing in front of me a career that I not only was good at, but a career that made me feel like I was never working. I quoted Isaiah earlier only to say what we've already heard. What is meant to be will be. As you take the next steps into your life journey, be very mindful of the goals and the criteria you set for yourself. Question where they come from. Question if they are your idea of success. And finally, question if the universe is conspiring to help you accomplish these goals. We will all experience failure. Failure is an inevitable part of life, unless we live so cautiously that we might not have lived at all. In that case, we failed by default. Failure is usually followed by suffering. We suffer at the hands of the mistakes we made, or suffer innocently at the hand of a warped universe that we do not have the capacity to understand. Hear me now. We cannot escape suffering. We can distract ourselves from it, but it will never truly leave us. Suffering is that proverbial mountain that we must all climb. There is no way around it. We can get stuck at the bottom of it and distract ourselves from it, but reaching the summit is 100% up to us. And also, it is entirely possible to scale the mountain of suffering, but to miss the views from the top because we were too distracted by the suffering. I had my last drink of alcohol on November 7th, 2017. Until that day, I had considered my life great. I had already abandoned the pursuit of degrees and focused my entire energy on helping people with special needs. I was so good at doing this that I started my own business, and by the third year, the organization I had founded was moving more than $5 million in sales. Not too shabby for a Mexican immigrant from a small town in South Texas. Life was good. Life was so good that I began to take vacations. Miami and New York City quickly became my playgrounds. Every Thursday, I had a decision to make. Where was I off to tomorrow? By every societal standard, I was successful and life was good. In the middle of the night on November 8th, 2017, I found myself in a situation I had never been in before. A spinal injury made it so that I had access to amazing medications. These medications, coupled with alcohol, made for a very interesting cocktail. That morning, I woke up in jail. A police officer had found me asleep at a red light. Life as I knew it was over. The frequent flights, the vacations, the good times, they were all over. The life I knew no longer existed, and the life that was in front of me did not interest me at all. Perhaps because society had told me that I was successful, and somehow losing all that meant that I also lost my identity. So I decided that taking my shoestrings around my neck would be the best solution to the situation I found myself in. As my hands moved towards my shoes, my guardian angel flashed in my mind a vision of my mother crying and experiencing great sadness. Since that moment, I've said that this is the moment that sobered me up. This is where my true journey to sobriety started. I paused for a moment to address the mothers. Mothers, never tire of praying for your children, regardless of how difficult they may make it for you to pray for them. I was, by all accounts, the black sheep of the family. I know, though, that the reason why God placed in my mother's heart the desire to pray unceasingly for me was because of that very dark hour. He would use an image of her to sober me up. So I say again, mothers, regardless of how difficult we sons and daughters make it, never get tired of praying for us. You may get to see it, or not, but you could very well be saving the life you helped to create. After the vision of my mom in tears left me, hurting myself was no longer an option. That didn't mean that the desire to live had returned. If I had been hit by an 18-wheeler or fallen off a cliff, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. Over the months that followed, life had no color. My smiles were forced, my laughter was hardly existed, and I was only going through the motions. One day, I was with my mom and dad when I finally felt the joy of a smile again. I was with them when food finally tasted good again. I was with them when being alive was no longer the worst thing in the world. Failure and suffering are an inevitable part of life, and life has a way of always producing more of it. However, suffering does not have to be in vain. We can use suffering to grow and to learn to appreciate life, the important things in life. The philosopher Socrates said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." This to me is a definition of a sober life, that when joy pays me a visit, I can look at it, see it, appreciate it, and allow it to leave me when it's time for it to go. Similarly, that I can see suffering and appreciate it and allow it to transform me and leave me when it has accomplished what it was sent to do. My dear friends, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. I urge you to be very intentional about filling your heart with love so that you can put out love. Similarly, that everything you receive, you are able to receive it in the spirit of love that invades you. I wish all of you very good lives.